You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. That tune was something I have been singing. It's been in my head for a number of years. I used to sing it to my mother, especially in her final years. She asked me to sing it whenever I'd visit her at the nursing home. I've also sang that song many times for my 4 daughters, and now I'm singing it for my grandchildren. And it seems to really put them to sleep. Anyway, I'm going to have you move back in time. I'm going to take you back in time to 1946, the first year of the baby boom. We're going to go north of the border, about 4 hours from where you sit right now. 4 hours northwest across the Minnesota border, home of 10,000 lakes. Everybody's got a boat. We're going to go to Madelia, Minnesota, little farming community, about 1,700. And this is where I was born and raised. This is where I was value programmed, Madelia, Minnesota. About 1,700 people. Our main street was about 4 blocks long. Everybody knew everybody. You couldn't get away with anything at Madelia. Once you get your driver's license, which was at that time about a day or 2 after you turned 15, we'd get our driver's license and we'd learn that that 4-block strip, not that exciting after you've done it about 10, 12 times. And when you're 15, you start thinking about dating, and dating the same girls you sat next to in 1st grade and 4th grade and 8th grade never was very interesting for me. My good friend Larry Larson, good Madelia name, Minnesota name, Larry and I had the same idea. Let's move out of town whenever the chance would avail itself. Let's get in the car and let's go out and find a larger social circle. So in those days, we had a lot of dances. We could go dancing. And this is really cool for those of you that remember dancing, where you could actually meet somebody and actually talk to them. There was no texting. You could actually talk to them. And we would experiment with different things like cute phrases or dance steps that we thought was cool. And then we'd really try to enhance our position on the dance floor by wearing different colognes. And of course, for me, there was always the old standby, my dad's Old Spice. And he only had 1 jug per year, so I mean, it ran out pretty quick. So we started experimenting with all different fragrances. Like maybe some of you remember Canoe, and then there was something called English Leather. Whoa, big bottles of English Leather. And then if you really wanted to get sporty, Jade East. Huh? Jade East, I'm telling you, when my mother, after I had left home for about 5 years, my mother said the washing machine still smelled like Jade East. We always got a big kick out of that. Well, anyway, we'd go to dances, Larry and I, and sometimes we'd have my good buddy Giff. Gifferson was the last name, nickname Giff. And of course, we all had nicknames. Mine was Cat Eye. How do you get the name Cat Eye? I have no idea, but everybody called me Cat Eye. Cat Eye and Giff. We're going to the dances with Larry. We'd go down south to Fairmont, to the Fox Lake Ballroom. Sometimes we'd go north to New Ulm, home of George's Ballroom. Maybe some of you have heard of it. I mean, it was the polka capital of the Midwest. Polka, polka, huh? Home of Fez Fritchie and the Six Fat Dutchmen? Now we're talking. Okay, that was Saturday night. But now on Sunday night, we went over to the Cato Ballroom in Mankato, Minnesota. That was always jumping because of the college, Mankato State College. It was so cool. All these kids from all over the United States would come there and they'd rock and roll. Well, a relationship did develop, a serious relationship did develop during those dancing years, and the young lady went off to the University of Minnesota, and me, in my infinite wisdom, Mr. Whipped Puppy, dropped everything, quit my job just like that, packed all my stuff into 2 grocery bags, and moved to Minneapolis. The relationship was fairly good for a couple of years, and I was going to school at the university, and I was driving an ambulance. I mean, all the experience, 3 weeks of a Red Cross class, and you got to drive an ambulance. All they needed was a kind of a strong back and maybe a weak mind, because whatever you were picking up at night. It was a fun job, but then the ugliness of infidelity entered my world, and it totally destroyed me. It threw me into the deepest depression I have ever been into. I immediately reached out for counseling at the Chicago Franklin liquor store. I fell in love with gin. Sometimes on Friday there would be a 12-pack of old-style beer washed down with a little Boone's Farm apple wine. I'm talking 2 years of a real pickled brain. About 1972, my best buddy, Giff and Cat Eye, sitting in the middle of one of those miserable, ugly, cold, and being from Minnesota, I can say this, miserable, ugly, cold, icy, wind-blowing Minnesota winters, we start thinking of sunshine. Let's go find the sun somewhere. This was like December, and you couldn't go anywhere. 12, 14 inches of snow and ice to walk on. We started thinking about going to find the sun, and I had heard at the university about this spring break. And being from a small town farm community, I knew about spring planting, I knew about fall harvest, but what is this spring break business? The more I asked, I found out that you could spring break in Southern California. That's too far to drive. Then I heard that you could spring break in some place called Padre Island, Texas. Well, I don't know, something about Texas, and it just didn't work. The stories started coming back that you could really spring break in Florida, anywhere up and down the coast. So that's where we thought, we're going to go to Florida. One of my roommates started getting real interested in it, and he was a NASCAR fan, a big race fan, and he said, yeah, let's go to Daytona Beach. They got a big racetrack down there. That's all we needed. We're going to go to Daytona Beach. How are you going to get there? Well, I had a really nice car. I had a 1978 Oldsmobile 88, all white interior with bucket seats, J2 engine, 3 2-barrel carburetors. It was so huge, it was like a boat. We nicknamed it the Queen Mary. It was my favorite. I traded it for a week, or 10 days, whatever it was, with one of my ambulance driving buddies who had a nice van, a Ford Econoline van. Sure enough, we had 5 guys now. We're going to get into this van. Now just think of this gypsy wagon. We're going to go on a road trip in a panel van with no windows. What is this all about? We're talking 1973 here now, okay? So we load up this van. We make the switch. I kiss the Queen Mary goodbye. And we make the switch. We get the van, and we hook up an 8-track tape player inside. And then we take some great big speakers out of our living room and hook them up to the 8-track. And then we load up with the tapes. We had Jefferson Airplane, and we had the Doors, and my favorite, we had Led Zeppelin. Huh? Remember Led Zeppelin? Whoa, good stuff. Then we had to stock the van. We had to load it up because we had to eat. We didn't have much money. We had a tight budget. We had bread. We had chips. We had popcorn. We popped popcorn for like 5 days in a row. We had this great big garbage can of popcorn. And for added color, we threw in, a little trail mix. We had jujubes and dots. That was our trail mix. So we're all loaded up. What's missing? Well, got to go down to the counselor's office at Chicago Franken Liquor Store and find out what's on sale for the beer. Well, we're in Minnesota. What you going to get? The cheapest beer possible. Hams, from the land of sky blue waters. Hams beer. Then we found some Blatz, and then we got some Buckhorn, and then we got some Milwaukee, and then we got the headache of all time. We got Howenstein. A beer that is winning new friends every year. Howenstein beer, Howenstein beer. Why have I remembered that song? There's something in the liquid. I don't know. We're on our way. The 5 knuckleheads in the gypsy wagon with no windows. We're heading to Florida. Somewhere in Florida, we're going to Daytona Beach. We stop in Nashville and pay homage to the Grand Ole Opry and, go into the museum and salute the statues. And then we headed for Daytona Beach. First thing we find out when we get there that there are no races during spring break. So that bummed out one of the guys in the van. And then we started to pool our money and we're saying, where are we going to stay down here? Well, we decided to go to Tomoka State Park, which is about 10 miles north of Daytona Beach. And for $10, you just pull in and hide under a tree or whatever. You could sleep under the van, on top of the van, inside the van, on the beach, anywhere you wanted to. During the day, we'd go into Daytona Beach. And for those of you that have been to Daytona Beach, the tide goes down during the day. And for 13 miles on Daytona Beach, you can drive on Daytona Beach. It's like a 2-way state highway. And here we are, small town guys in a van, whatever, just looking out the front window because we got no windows on the side. We're driving up and down. And everybody say, yeah, look at that. Well, then we got 4 or 5 guys looking out this window, and then we're looking out this window. It really must have been a clown car. We decide that we have got to move into town, at least on our final day. Like the final night is like a Friday night. So we packed up from the Tomoka State Park and we moved in. We looked up and down the strip and we finally found one room. And we pull in there and my buddy gives me the flipper. He said, yeah, I saw 2 cars with Minnesota license plates. Well, how cool is that? 2 cars with Minnesota license plates. I mean, we are on spring break, right? What we did now sounds a little creepy, but we posted lookouts. We took 20-minute breaks watching those 2 cars to see if anybody would come out of a room or from the beach to these cars. Well, sure enough, somebody came out of the room, went to the car, and the guy on lookout intercepted her, and then we came down, and all of a sudden there's 5 guys talking to one girl, and she's sort of backing up like this, a little bit nervous about these over-aggressive Minnesota boys. We found that there were 3 more at the poolside, 3 more out in the ocean. And so we all got together later in the afternoon, and we found out that cousins knew cousins, and it was familiar, and we went to the same restaurants and all that stuff, and everybody knew about the Cato Ballroom. So, I mean, we were starting to feel real comfortable about our new friends in Florida. Now, how random is this? I mean, we're talking thousands of people And these girls had spent the first part of the week down in Fort Lauderdale and had just stopped in Daytona Beach on the way back. And here we meet. Well, it was kind of an interesting connection. I mean, it was one of those things where it's kind of interesting, but these girls were 2-3 years younger, and they probably saw that we were a little bit phony because we had gotten these University of Minnesota football jerseys, the practice jerseys, and we're out on the beach, you know, throwing the football, and one of the guys is a wrestler, and he had a broken wrist, and he kind of, you know, launched it I mean, it looked really comical the way that he threw the football. But anyway, we made friends. That night, Giff and I went out on the strip, and we were looking around, and we were really attracted to this one bar. And the bar had the front end of a great big high-masted schooner sailing ship from the 1800s. It looked like it was cut right in half, and it was sticking out into the street, and then you go in the door, and then here's the ballroom, or the dance floor. The name of the bar was the Wreck. It was a wreck of a ship, W-R-E-C-K, wreck. Now, I'm thinking metaphor right now. Here I am, a wreck of a person, very depressed. I am downtrodden. I am on my last legs, so to speak, and I am desperate to be saved. I'm desperate to find some way out of this depression. We walk into the bar, and it's one of those real cramped bars situation, and I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around, and the strobe light, the dancing strobe light, the disco light, was bouncing around up on the dance floor. And so this vision of loveliness was in silhouette. Beautiful, long, blonde hair. Just beautiful, kind of like a Farrah Fawcett look before Farrah Fawcett became famous. She was wearing a yellow tank top, bare midriff, very tan, and Daisy Duke shorts before Daisy made them famous. And she had a chair. Would you like to sit down? Just then, I realized it was the nice girl at the pool. Her name was Charlotte. I really loved that name, Charlotte. It was so cool. And she was offering me a chair. Well, how nice of you. I sit down on the chair. Where is she going to sit? Well, she can sit right on my lap. Then my life came to slow motion. I heard everything she said. I was singing along to the Led Zeppelin tunes on the stereo, and she thought that was kind of impressive. And then I felt like a drowning man coming up out of the water and breathing fresh air for the first time. Someone had thrown me a life preserver, and I did not know this girl 24 hours earlier. And by random chance, she stopped in from Fort Lauderdale. And I found out that we only lived 20 blocks away from each other in Minneapolis. I mean, how cool was that? Well, we danced. We tried to dance a little bit, and we were talking, and she thought I was funny, and I thought she was the cleanest smelling girl I'd ever been close to. I mean, really, like breath of fresh air. Midnight came, and of course, being the good guy, midnight comes, that means you gotta go home and go to bed. So we walked on the beach, and she let me hold her hand. And we walked on the beach for a while and talked about life and shared our wishes or desires or what we thought would be a good, fun future. Not thinking that we were going to end up together. She allowed me, when I walked her back to her room, she let me kiss her one time. And in those days, no cell phone, we exchanged phone numbers. So I got her phone number and I put it in my shirt pocket. And really didn't think much more, but I really liked the way I felt when I was with her. A week later, we are back in Minneapolis. And I ran kind of an Animal House situation at 24th and Elliott. It's a nasty section of town, and we always had big parties. I mean, we had ambulance drivers, we had some interns, we had Hennepin County medical examiner people, we had orderlies, and we were only a block away from the largest nursing dormitory in the state. So the social life, at times, could be kind of fun. But this Saturday, we had about 20 guys and only about 6 girls. Well, for heaven's sakes, what are you going to do? Well, again, here's my wingman, my right-hand guy. Give Cat Eye, why don't you call that girl that you met in Florida? Well, hope I found the number. And I found the number. I called her up. Hi, this is Jim from Florida. Oh, you remember. Okay. Well, how are you tonight? Why, Saturday, we are having a party. It's kind of a nasty area, so we'll be right down in front of the house, so that you don't have to worry about it. And, oh, by the way, could you bring some friends over? So she did. An hour later, the doorbell rings, and Charlotte comes in with 9 of her friends. 9! 2 Carlos! Slim, trim, blonde, fun, attractive, bubbly, singing songs. To this day, there's 3 or 4 guys from that posse, that crew, that still think I'm the greatest guy in the world. I made that party happen. It's like a random chance. Was it luck? Was it a coincidence? What made it happen? The relationship started slowly, but I loved the idea of breathing fresh air and feeling good about myself, and she made me feel good about myself, which made for a much better life. 2 years from that party, I asked her to marry me. Yesterday, we celebrated our 41st wedding anniversary. Charlotte and I still put on swimsuits. We still go to the beach. And whenever anybody says anything about spring break, we break out in big smiles.